Here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome once again, everyone. Today I've got yet another update of a company that I just visited in my recent swing through the southwestern U.S. and that just came out with some really nice news in the week just passed, and that is on Arizona Gold and Silver Incorporated. As you see here, they're listed in Canada under the symbol AZS, and in the U.S. here on the OTCQB, the symbol is AZASF. And in a minute, I'll be bringing on my friend Mike Stark, the CEO of Arizona Gold and Silver. He and or myself will be making quite likely some forward-looking statements. So be mindful of that. A lot of exciting things going on, and a lot of which I was able to see quite happily with my own two beady little eyes here when I was down at their project just between Kingman and Bullhead City, Arizona. Indeed, besides being an extremely accessible project right off a major highway between Bullhead City and the Laughlin area down on the Colorado River on the one end, and Kingman up above where the Philadelphia Project is, which is Arizona Gold and Silver's flagship property. Besides that, the other thing that's very notable about this, and I've said it since the very beginning when I first started covering this story and added Arizona Gold and Silver to my recommended list for our members, the geological story here is stark, and Mike loves it when I use his last name to talk about his company and the project. But folks, we've talked before when I first mentioned Arizona Gold and Silver about the Philadelphia Project being a hidden, much larger and richer than understood system that's basically under this big red cap. In fact, the Red Hills area of the Philadelphia Project is kind of ground central for what really is a much larger package of land that runs along a larger fault than I even fully understood. In fact, besides visiting Mike down there, I visited with Dr. Lex Lambeck. He is the company's new Senior VP of Geology, quarter of a century experience all throughout this hemisphere and in Australia, where he hails from originally. And he was pointing out to me, and a couple of the areas that we were visiting, we spent one afternoon at the warehouse visiting, as you see here, looking at ore samples, talking about maps and things like that. And then the next day we spent pretty much all morning, got an early start too, out in the field and traversing this area where every once in a while you see a wild burro and a couple of pretty cactus species there as well. But otherwise, what really stood out like a sore thumb was a surface expression of not only this rhyolite dome, as it's called, which is kind of a lid, as they've described it, of a pressure cooker, that every now and then, past eruptions would pop up through this thing. You'd see surface outcrops of silver and gold mineralization. But there's a larger fault system that runs throughout this Oatman, the larger Oatman mining district, and it's just uncanny how a lot of guesswork that even the old timers had, let alone modern geologists, is taken away by the very apparent visible surface structure of the system that they're drilling. When I bring Mike on, I'll be sharing a few other photos from my trip and anecdotes, and he's going to talk about this last week's drilling results. A few other holes came out, very nice intercepts, and broadening their primary target, and that is what's called the Perry vein and the Perry vein system, which is coming out to be a lot larger and richer in some areas than was originally thought. In fact, and this is my figure, not his, so don't hold him to it. But when I was first looking at this story, we figured, okay, this is something that's just been poked at like a lot of places in years past by old-fashioned miners with burros and picks and axes and a very small work other than that. And okay, maybe we'll end up with a 1 million-ounce gold equivalent resource, give or take. It started out really the company story was silver, then all of a sudden they were running into more gold. And now we're looking at the possibility of having way more than that. This is a much larger potential system than anybody thought, even when Mike and his original team came in and took over the Philadelphia Project some time back. And that's all the more reason why you really need to do your homework and accumulate a position, I think now, especially in Arizona Gold and Silver, if you haven't already, or if maybe you sold some shares higher, start buying them back. Like a lot of really good companies, the share price, is almost half off of the give or take of what the high was. And interestingly enough, in their unique case, a lot of the selling a short time ago, and Mike and I addressed this in a follow-up video. I'll throw the link to that on here as well. It came from, frankly, investors not understanding what they were looking at. And I think the drilling of this last week, I believe what is going to be coming sooner rather than later is going to show that this system is still going to get larger at depth. It's going to traverse potentially a couple of faults that were encountered with past drilling. And again, this is just a way bigger story than a lot of people are still able to understand. So you especially want to be looking at this now. And I make that point too for those of you who've not seen this already in a podcast episode, special issue of Your Money Today I did recently, as you see here. The title, I've used it a few times. This is still not your father's gold market. In our newsletter, we already pulled on our horns a lot. We reduced a lot of our exposure to precious metals generally a few months back before we had this sell-off. And I'm telling people now, as we get into the spring, that not necessarily do I see the selling over. There's still scenarios where precious metals prices could weaken further. But what you can and should be doing now is taking or building or rebuilding positions in the best individual stories whose individual news will be as important or more than the direction of what gold and silver prices do. And I'm quite confident, in my view, that there's a lot of good news to come uniquely for Arizona Gold and Silver that's going to rebuild attention and rebuild the share price, in my view, regardless of what happens to metal prices. This, again, is still a phenomenal story. People don't understand it. They're going to understand it a whole lot more sooner rather than later. One last thing before I bring Mike on is that I want to share this video with you that they've got on their website. That this would be a good place to have it for those of you who are newer to the story. It's a great introduction, very well done. Better, frankly, than I could do with voiceover of a lot of the video footage I took, although you're going to see me use some of that not too far down the road. But this is a nice, classy overview of what the story is here. And again, beyond what the average investor understands still. Obviously, the red hills could not be any more distinct than what you see right here. Especially on the left side here, you see how the distinct outcrops and the jagged edges of a lot of these surface showings of mineralization are just remarkable. Two drill rigs currently working while I was there. Imminently, if all goes well, they will be adding a second drill rig. There, of course, is Dr. Lex Lambeck, the head geologist now, looking at some of the core. There are a couple of very telltale types of things we were looking for, and it was quite a fun learning experience. You're seeing here, of course, Arizona Gold and Silver's warehouse and office complex, which is just within a few miles of the main entrance to the Philadelphia Project property, and barely 10 minutes up the hill out of the Laughlin, Nevada and Bullhead City, Arizona confluence of where the Colorado River comes down. Again, especially if you have any kind of geological experience whatsoever, these visuals and what you can see at the Philadelphia Project with the naked eye are some of the most remarkable sights you ever want to see, and very tantalizing. You know why the company is excited and why I'm excited. And here is my good buddy, Mike Stark, the CEO of Arizona Gold and Silver. Now we're visiting virtually again after seeing one another in person there recently, Mike.
Very true. It was a pleasure having you down, Chris. I'm glad you had the opportunity.
You know, it was great, and I say it all the time that you can understand something or think you understand something from a distance and looking at maps and press releases and our conversations and otherwise. But when you're right there and you and Lex can point me in this direction, see, there's the Arabian Fault this way, there's the Arabian Fault this way. Here's what we're doing. Here's why. Here's where the old timers went in and see that. You see why they did that. Okay, then the light bulbs start going off over my head. And you guys really are sitting on something that's way bigger than what you even thought it was when you first got into that project at the Philadelphia Project. And it's exciting to see how this thing is progressing. And we'll talk a little bit about that, Mike, because you just put out the last few holes that again showed the kind of continuity that Lex is looking for. And specifically, you're looking at what's called the Perry zone, or the Perry vein rather. And there's an area where you're trying to demonstrate the greater continuity, greater mass, and everything with this. So walk us through the specific holes that you put out this week, and here they are again. I put them out a minute ago before you came on, but here they are again. Again, nice intercepts, very mineable widths, good grades. So how does that start to piece together more so your and Lex's view that this is going to be a much larger vein overall area than what you might have thought previously?
And that's a great question, Chris. Look, the simple answer to this is we saw the outer edges, so we know we're 165 meters wide down at 156 and across. So 156, 157, 158 demonstrated a really wide area. So we moved up because of hole 160, 159, and 160. We moved up to understand where and what that fault was all about. These holes demonstrate the continuity above that vein area. And now we're obviously adding major ounces to the project as well. The next holes, which you got a piece of when you were there, 166, 166, 165, and 167, I think are even going to be stronger because of the knowledge that Lex has gained from what we saw on those holes that prior, which we put out today. These are instrumental in learning the system. We're dealing with something that's 19 million years old, and the only way you're going to find out is you have to drill it.
Mhm.
And I really applaud your compliment about the vastness of this, because until you're really there, people just don't get the scope
No.
of how big this is.
No, and again, you've explained it to me many a time. Greg did, until he went into semi-seclusion and stepped
Yeah.
back to let Lex come in and take over, and the rest. And yeah, so I got it conceptually, but I didn't understand the size of this thing and what kind of a system it is. And in fact, I loved Lex's comment when we first got together the first afternoon I was there at your warehouse and office when he said, we used to think, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, he said we used to think that the Philadelphia project that we're working on, defining right now, was part of the old Oatman Historical Mining District. I'm going to prove that Oatman was a part of the Philadelphia district because he thinks that's what you got. And I can see it.
Exactly.
Being there, I could see just the size of this thing, and it is way beyond what I expected. And I don't think I've seen very many examples either, Mike, of how well confined by surface appearances and how easily addressable by surface appearances this is. It's not a pig in a poke. You're not doing blind holes and stuff. You can follow where this rib goes, this
Yeah.
Arabian Fault, and you
Yeah.
know where to drill based on what your work is produced based on geophysics, all the rest of that kind of stuff, and what the old timers where they first gave you some clues with some of the holes because we looked at a few of the areas where they had gone in and you explained why, Lex explained why, and again, so this system, a lot of what is visible to the naked eye is already taken a lot of guesswork out of this. I think is accurate to say.
That's in a very good statement. And, again, the southern furthest tip that we took you to, and we walked you up the hill on that
Yeah,
prospecting pit that's about a 25-foot deep pit. That was half ounce material.
yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I
Heck
mean,
no.
literally, it's a diagram with a map, say gold is here, gold is here, gold
Yeah,
is here. It's now drill it. That's it. It's really, I mean, I wish I could say it was that simple, but it really is telling us every step of the way where to go. And I like that. I mean, this is a big system that is increasing by dimensions now on
yeah.
every little bit of sampling we do.
Right. And so these holes that came out this last week, just to better define those for folks who've been following the story, prior to that, you came out with a couple of holes that kind of showed where a couple of faults intruded, and
Right.
deeper down confined, for now, the big mineralization that's in this Perry vein. Is that correct?
That's a good statement. Look, as I said, they reached the outer limits, so we have a
Right.
165-meter vein.
Right.
We will go down below that with the permit that's coming,
Yep.
but at this point, we wanted to get above, try to understand what maybe is going on, and prove up additional width above us. The next holes are going to be even wider, 30 to 70 meter step outs. And again, we're successful. We know that we see mineralization in them, so we're very confident in what we're going to see. So we still haven't reached the outer limits,
Right.
but what I'm looking forward to next now is drilling below 156. That's our best intercept. That's
Right.
165 meters wide. And if we can say this turns out to be an upside down martini glass, it's only going to get wider and better at depth.
That's a great because being there, folks, I get that picture of that upside down martini glass. And so when you get outside where those fault structures were, and you get blower, there's every expectation that you're going to show again that you're in really good material. Because and Lex
Exactly.
explained this to me when I got down here. Of course, I met him for the first time when we got together down in your warehouse. He explained why it's not only no big deal, but it's expected in a system
Yeah,
like this that you're going to have these kind of intrusions once in a while. We're okay. We got to here's one hurdle, but on the other side of that, we're still right back in the same stuff. And when he showed me from the surface where you're going to drill and why and how he thinks that is outside these faults, I mean, I could see it, and I'm not a geologist, so take it with a grain of salt, folks. I could see that. I can see the
yeah,
thesis behind that. So for
yeah.
those who said, "Oh, gee, maybe they've got to the extent of this whole thing, and that's the end of the story," it's still at the beginning of the story.
And that's a really good statement as well. Look, after you left on a Monday, I wasn't there. I left by then, but on Monday we had a structural geologist come down, a very close friend to Lex and very well astute man himself. And he really reconfirmed what Lex is thinking. Now, Lex is not a structural geologist, so it was a really enhancement to him to go, okay, if you see it that way, and he goes, well, did you see this, Lex? And Lex is like, I've been thinking about that. You said, better think about that. This is bigger than you think. It's
Right.
got the material. You just need to put a hole over here. And by the way, your southern extension, it maps out. It tells you.
Yeah.
And there's no visibly, excuse me, there is no interruptions down there like that we had here. So remember the Vera Nancy model? Plum, plum. It's really starting to add up. It
That's
really
great.
starting to make sense.
Well, I'm excited to see these additional holes come out. And you're going to be accelerating drilling once you get your BLM permits that are in right now. You're going to be adding a rig, correct?
That's correct. All
Uh,
that takes place. There's going to be 15 drill pads that it's going to be granted multiple holes. There's no restriction on how many holes per pad.
right.
And as we explained to you, we have them already mapped out where we want to go. The very first pad is going to be pad 10 below 156, number
Okay.
one.
Good stuff. And enabling this in a really big way, you guys announced back in the latter part of March that you had gotten a major cash infusion from Bornholm.
Yeah.
They're a boutique, is that right to say boutique private capital firm, private equity
They
firm?
are a fund out of Europe. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And very excited about them and how this is going to develop. Obviously, that TSX is yet to approve it, but we're in the final strokes of that as well. It's an $18 million deal done at 80 cents, well above our share price currently. But that to me shows how committed that these people are and excited. They were on site and the same words came out of their mouth. Holy smokes, this is bigger than I thought.
I was just going to
And
say
that's
that because I was there right after, not long after they were.
right.
And
Right.
you were sharing some of the anecdotes about their observations and things like that. And I know that when you and I were putting a schedule together for when I'm going to show up and other people were, that this was kind of a very proprietary visit on their part because they were there with a checkbook, wanting to kick the tires and see what you got, and they're sold
They
on the
are.
broad vision of this.
Yeah. Very happy how we've got to here on very minimal budgets,
Mhm.
but it's now time to put, like you say, put the drill rigs on it. Let's prove it. And there's
Yep.
where we're at.
Step on the accelerator. You're getting a lot of success so far, and you can really. I think this year still. Correct me if I'm being overly optimistic. And of course, folks, keep in mind, the slide we had on earlier. We're all making forward-looking statements here, and
Right.
working hard on Mike's part, and all the rest of us keeping our fingers crossed. But there's been a lot of uh, success to date with this, and perhaps we could get to the end of 2026 with at least the inkling of an initial resource that somewhere down the road you'll put out.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Look, and I've always said this, until we see some sort of limitations to this,
Right.
we'll be outdone in a month. If we put out a resource now and it'll be outdone in a month with
Oh
the
yeah.
hitting done. So yeah, I mean, we intend to. There's no question about it. That's what some people need to see. And I think we shared that with you as well, is
Yeah.
the majors are already doing their own. They've
Oh
already
yeah.
done their own modeling, and they know what we're having. We're happy, that they think that some of the numbers are quite flattering. Let's put it that
Right.
way. But it's also the interest of them that shows us that we are doing things right. That to me is the tick in the box.
Well, and these next holes, these assays to come that you've already drilled, and I got to see some of it when I was there. You sent me pictures of a little bit more after I left and said, "Oh, it's getting better. It's getting better." Um, these holes that are to come that have already been drilled, the ones that are going to follow up on that. And again, if you look at my hands, is like the outsides of the martini glass where these faults are. If this thing does flare out, and then on the outside of it, you hit the stuff again, now you're really going to validate how big this thing is. And it's important for folks to remember, Mike, that you didn't start this out as Arizona Gold and Silver. You started this company out as Arizona Silver Corporation, and you were of a mind that there was a primary silver resource there that you could flesh out that had been left behind. And as you've gone along, you changed the name because all of a sudden you're hitting more gold and silver,
Exactly.
and now you're
Yeah.
kind of holy cow, what are we sitting on here? What is under this big rhyolite dome, this pressure cooker that's there? I mean, this thing really does stick out like a sore thumb. This formation is one of the neatest things geologically you're ever going to see. For those of you who have followed this industry, even if you haven't followed, all you got to do is look at this thing. All you have to do is look at some of the stuff you see expressed on the surface, and you're like, wow. And it's
Yeah.
like so many other areas that have not had a lot of modern exploration that was left behind. There's still some low-hanging fruit in a lot of these old historic districts. So, the Oatman District is not just fun for bikers and wild burros that now are not so wild. I mean, when I went to visit Oatman, they walk right up to you and looking for a
Yeah.
handout. I don't know if one of them is the mayor of Oatman now or not. Wouldn't shock me to find that out. That's kind of a novelty in that part of the country. So, any other parting words for right now, Mike? And we're going to have you back, of course, when these other holes come out.
Absolutely. I'm glad to come back. And yeah, I mean, basically, I'm looking at 5 more releases now that we're working on, Chris. So there's a lot of the news flow coming. Uh, I expect this to be well received because it's what shareholders have been waiting for. And that's my bottom line. This is all about shareholders, and we're some of the biggest shareholders ourselves.
Yeah,
But it's a real pleasure to be able to start talking about this stuff now.
that's
And
great.
again, thank you for coming and
Yeah.
thank you for understanding what we obviously have here, and it's getting bigger.
Well, it was great fun, and again, a major eye opener for me to ratify what I already had conceptually in my mind. Now I've seen it. So, folks, here again on the screen is how you get a hold of Arizona Gold and Silver. Make sure you kick the tires if you haven't already. I've been saying on a lot of recent interviews that this gray area, downtime, consolidation, whatever you want to call it in the precious metal space, is a time. We still got a flashing yellow light. It's caution time, where metals prices themselves are concerned and where sector-wide investments are concerned. But this is quite definitely the time that you should be buying or methodically adding to the best stories out there, and Arizona Gold and Silver is one of them. So, Mike, thanks for your time, and thanks again for your hospitality down there. I had a great visit, and looking forward to bigger and better things still.
I thank you, Chris, and a very wise statement. I'm definitely like you. I'm adding to my position. Thank you very much for this.
Take care.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.